Go ahead, Barry. Okay.
If you don't mind.
We're in a public place,
Mm-hmm.
so we're here to report a crime. We're here to report what I believe was obstruction of justice involving the acting police chief on the night that Joe Fells had his incident. So we'd like to begin the process here at the local law enforcement agency where the misconduct of the law enforcement officers took place. We came 2 nights ago,
2 nights ago.
and I guess Goodrich tried to send officers, how do you pronounce Mr. Psycho?
Captain Psycho.
Captain Psycho, yeah. He had us try to take this offline into the DA's office when in fact this is the location where our inquiry needs to be filed. So I want to begin the process to have this law enforcement agency, number one, report to Internal Affairs the actions of the officers on scene as well as the actions of the police chief that night. So
what I'm thinking is, this is more of a personnel complaint? Is that kind of where you're going?
No,
No.
I'm reporting a crime
Mm-hmm.
because Dan Hughes clearly is guilty of what I believe as a citizen of obstruction of justice in his involvement in orchestration of how procedure was not followed that night and deliberately did everything in his power to make sure that adequate evidence wasn't gathered at the time that this dispatch of officers arrived on scene took place. We have a situation where 4 police officers showed up at the behest of a phone call from a concerned resident. We had someone who was clearly involved in a hit and run and smelled of alcohol, and the officers did not administer a breathalyzer. In fact, what ended up happening was Dan Hughes was notified by the watch commander, Mr. Goodrich, and Dan Hughes, by his own admission in the memo, clearly stated that he was going to make sure that he would call the sergeant and that he would make sure that that field sergeant would conduct a preliminary assessment. So what he did is he had 4 officers out there that should have done what they were trained to do, and that is to immediately administer a breathalyzer when you have someone guilty of red-handed, smelling of booze with a hit-and-run situation. He did no such thing. As a matter of fact, he made sure that there was a delay in the field sobriety test being administered, made sure it was done by somebody other than the 4 people that showed up. He made sure that there was no breathalyzer administered, so we wouldn't have any concrete evidence of blood alcohol content at the time of the crime. So that is the crime I want to report.
Okay. So this is fairly unusual.
Of course it is.
This whole...
Because usually when someone runs into a wall or wrecks the car or smells like booze and the cops show up, you don't get to talk to the police chief. Usually you get the cuffs.
At 1:30 in the morning.
At 1:30, usually you get the cuffs and you get the breathalyzer. If you talk back, you get punched or you get screen checked. But in this case, Mr. Fells was driven home and he was not arrested and he was left in possession of his driver's license, free to go drink and drive again. So that is a serious concern, but more of a concern is the level of circumvention of the process that was that Dan Hughes' involvement resulted in. So that is what I'm here to report. I'm here to report a crime that took place on the night of November 6th involving case number 1674804.
November 9th.
On November 9th. So I'd like to have this written up and entered into whatever procedural protocol needs to be done so that the proper people start looking, including Internal Affairs, because the officers that showed up, Boline, Haight, Gilbert, and Wilkerson, should not have felt the need to call the police chief on a routine hit-and-run drunk driving suspect being in clear violation of the vehicle code. They should have administered the field sobriety test with a breathalyzer at the time, and they should have done it in the presence of another officer immediately, not delayed and wait till Santa Claus showed up. So that's kind of what happened here. So I believe these people have some culpability in this too, and I would like to see them investigated and possibly disciplined if not terminated. Because if this is the kind of treatment that we give people that are on the inside, what kind of treatment do we give to people on the outside?
Well, let me address one thing. The internal investigation into that incident is ongoing.
Of course.
As you may or may not be aware.
I am aware it was,
Okay.
one request was launched by Mr. Kiger.
Right.
I'm here to shed a little more information on this based on what my
But that investigation is would have been started and ongoing regardless of personnel complaint from Kaiser, Kiger, which, and I know very little about any of these incidents. You seem to have some documentation with you. So what I'm going to do right now is I'll consult with the watch commander and see how we want to proceed with this, because this is, as you can imagine, a little unusual than we normally deal with.
Yeah, it's very unconventional,
and quite honestly, I don't think you're in the right place for what you're trying to accomplish here. But let me see, because it appears that you've already been here once.
Yes, I'll explain what happened. We came to file, we came to report a crime.
Right.
And we sat here for probably 30 minutes or so, maybe 40 minutes, and Goodrich was the watch commander.
Right.
And Mr. Sicko came from the side door in what appeared to be plain clothes, admitting that he wasn't on duty, and he was very nice to me. Came from the gym and said, you know, this is what you should do. You should contact, why don't you send me all your information, and I'll send that to the Special Prosecution Unit of the District Attorney's Office. And I said, well, are you on duty, and are you the watch commander? And he said, no. But he was trying to be cordial and direct me in a direction that I believe is not the proper direction, so that's why I returned here tonight.
Well, in the fact that you've mentioned all these people, Psycho is the captain, he's in charge of patrol, he's what you would call the division commander. And so, since you mentioned all these folks, it'd be prudent to me to find out, obviously since you came in a couple days ago, to find out how they want to proceed with what you're trying to do here.
With all due respect, officer, how you proceed is one thing, but you should be taking our report. That should be a given.
Well, we'll see what the captain has to say, because obviously you brought this up a couple days ago. So obviously there are probably some internal conversations that may have happened about what you're trying to do, and I want to get the answer of what we're going to do. So if you give me a few minutes,
Sure, absolutely.
we'll come back and do that.
Yeah, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
All right.